Today we're going to continue writing in our immigration project for bringing history to life, or our informational text writing. Our teaching point today is I can continue writing all about sections of my informational text or add in an essay. Yesterday we went over everything that should be included in an all about. We know that we need to focus on what it looks like overall. We need to focus on making choices about what information to include or not to include. We need to make sure we use a teaching tone. You had a level 3 example of this and a level 4. If you are not done with this yet, you will continue to ask a question to start a paragraph, have between 4 and 6 sentences, and make sure all of your facts fit together. We also went over a level 4 example. We know level 4, you had some bold words, you had your sources, you had multiple paragraphs, and we talked about how every paragraph needs to have between 4 to 6 sentences. This is where we have a couple of choices, writers. In order to do some level 3 or maybe some level 4 work, you could do all about writing for chapter 2, chapter 3, and chapter 4. That would be on grade level work. The other option you have is to include an essay for one of your chapters. At this time, we're going to pause the video and decide if you will be a student who tries out an essay or if you want to do all about writing for chapter 2, 3, and 4. If you're on the rug right now, that means that you've made the decision that you want to push yourself as a writer. Here are the learning targets we're going to focus on here. When we write an essay for one of our chapters, we need to have good transitions. This means that we use words in each section that help readers understand how one piece of information connected with others. If I wrote this section in sequence, I use words or phrases such as before, later, next, then, after. If I organize the section in kinds or parts, I use another, also, or for example. What this is telling us is our essay needs to have some sort of order, either chronological or it needs to be linked by topics, and it needs to include those transition words. Here again, it needs to be organized. You need to have information into sections, use paragraphs and chapters to separate. Each section had information that was mostly about the same thing. I may have used headings or subheadings. And the last part is here. When it felt right to do so, I chose interesting comparisons and figurative language to clarify my points. Let's pause and talk about what does it mean to use figurative language. Right, one example of figurative language might be a simile or a metaphor, so comparing two things. Let's take a look at an example essay here, and I want you to look for how I included transition words, how I grouped, and how I used figurative language. Chapter 3, all about Ellis Island. Ellis Island was such an important part of immigration. While many people know the name Ellis Island, not as many know the story behind this place. Ellis Island was a place of many names. It's also the area where both physical and legal inspections took place. An island of many names. Ellis Island was used for different reasons before it was a place for immigrants. In addition, it even had many different names. For example, it was called Island of Tears, Heartbreak Island, and Oyster Island. At one point, it held Fort Gibson. Later on, the federal government purchased Ellis Island from New York State. Legal inspections. When immigrants arrived at Ellis Island, they had a legal inspection. Let me explain that a legal inspection is where they checked for information on how old the immigrant was. In addition, they talked about their morals. Finally, they made sure the immigrant would be a productive worker. Finally, later on, they needed to take a literacy test to prove that they could read and write. Another test that the immigrants needed to undergo once entering Ellis Island was a physical inspection. that is, unless you were first or second class. They had this inspection on the ship. If you were third class, steerage, for example, you had the physical examination when you arrived at Ellis Island. If the immigrant seemed sick or diseased, they had to go through a whole inspection. This could be a very long wait. If they were too sick or had an illness that wouldn't go away, they could be deported. If they needed time to recover, they were detained. The most dreaded inspection according to TrueBook Ellis Island was the eye inspection. Let me explain how uncomfortable this inspection could be. They checked the eyes for disease that could cause blindness. They did this by taking a hook and turning the eyelid inside out. This sounds far more painful than stubbing your toe or hitting your funny bone. As you can see, Ellis Island was a vital part of immigration. It had many different names. In addition, this was the place where immigrants underwent physical and legal inspections. The journey, however, was a bit different for each person or group of people. How did I use transitions? How did I group it? And how did I use figurative language? In addition, you may share out what other nonfiction features did you notice here? Or what did you notice about essays? Go ahead and turn and talk. Good, you noticed many of the transitions that I used throughout. Another also, for example, I also had used my teaching tone. I did use some bold words. I had a thesis and 5 paragraphs. I used some figurative language when I said how painful the eye exam was. I did group into some sections, into paragraphs, but I also included some subheadings because I thought that was useful. Besides this, I gave a source that I had used and everything else that you guys have shared. Today then, you're going to think about how you can use some great transitions, organize your writing, and use some figurative language to write your own essay. Remember, this essay is just on one chapter, so this was my chapter 3, all about Ellis Island. If you need access to this video, again, you can go on your Google Classroom and you can rewatch or use your paper that was handed out as an example of an essay.